The Last Remnant is a game that understands battlefield strategy better than emotional tragedy. It can make you rethink every squad, every formation, every command. But when it comes to drama, it feels like the main writer left the room and the combat designer tried to finish the scene. So today I want to talk about why life, death, and loss work better in other games, and why The Last Remnant missed its chance to make tragedy truly matter. The Last Remnant is a strange little gem from Square Enix, originally released in 2008 and remastered in 2018. It is a role-playing game about ancient, powerful artifacts called remnants, political conflicts, family legacy, and a young hero trying to understand a war that is clearly too complicated for him. And yes, it is very easy to understand why people sometimes call The Last Remnant Final Fantasy 12.5. The similarity is very visible. The art style, the political atmosphere, the large-scale conflicts, the cities, the races, the tone of the world, and even the way the story tries to mix personal drama with national crisis. It all feels like The Last Remnant lives somewhere in the same neighborhood as Final Fantasy XII. Even the main hero gives similar energy. Rush and Vaughn both are young, emotional, not exactly strategic masterminds, and often surrounded by adults who understand the situation much better than they do. But where The Last Remnant truly separates itself from Final Fantasy XII is not the world, not the art style, and not even the story. It is the combat. The Last Remnant has interesting mechanics and unusual battles.
Victory shall be ours!
Battles in The Last Remnant do not forgive you. Seriously. This is not a simple RPG where 4 characters stand in a line and politely wait to hit monsters one by one. You command unions, groups of units who act together. This game gives you battlefield chaos, where every single thing you do counts. Your squad composition matters, your formation matters, enemy positioning matters, morale matters, timing matters. Even the commands available to you can change depending on the situation. At first, this can feel confusing. Even the early battles in the cave can punch you in the face if you are playing for the first time. The game does not gently pat your head and explain everything. It throws systems at you and expects you to learn by getting bruised. Every fight has movement, pressure, risk, and momentum. It makes you think. And that is why The Last Remnant is memorable. Its combat has identity.
Who the hell are you people?
We don't have to introduce ourselves to the likes of you. Get ready.
The characters are also part of the game's strange charm. Rush is impulsive, emotional, and sometimes painfully naive. He is not the smartest person in the room, and usually the room is very crowded with people smarter than him. But that is his role. He is young, lost, and desperate to save his sister. David brings the political side of the story. He is calmer, more responsible, and far more aware of the weight of leadership. Then there are David's generals and companions. Torgal, Pegas, and Blochter give the story a sense of military structure and history. But Emma stands out early. She is experienced, disciplined, strict, and reliable. She has the feeling of a veteran who has already survived enough battles to understand what war costs. She is not loud. She is not flashy. She is not written as a typical young heroine. She is a mentor figure, a military woman, and someone who seems to carry a long personal history behind her. The story begins with Rush trying to save Irina, but it quickly grows into something larger. The remnants are not just magical objects. They are symbols of power, control, history, and political authority. Every nation wants influence. Every ruler has motives. The Last Remnant wants to tell a story about family, legacy, power, and sacrifice. It wants to feel grand, like a political fantasy epic where personal grief and national conflict collide. Yes, like Final Fantasy XII, which mastered that formula to perfection. The game has that Square Enix habit of making everything look ancient, dramatic, and slightly impossible to explain in one sentence. The story tries to be epic, it tries to be emotional, it tries to create moments of loss and consequence. But then we arrive at the part that, for me, breaks the illusion. Now, after talking about the characters and the story, we come to the most underdeveloped part of the game, the twist with Emma's death. It should be one of the most important moments in The Last Remnant. On paper, it has everything. A respected mentor figure, a dangerous villain, a battlefield sacrifice, and a legacy passed to the next generation. But in practice, it does not land as strongly as it should. The first problem is emotional setup. Before Emma dies, we do not get enough time to truly know her. We understand her role. We understand that she is competent and loyal. We understand that she matters to David and to the military structure around him. But we do not get enough personal connection. Her past, her family, her emotional life, her deeper relationship with the world, most of that either appears too late or becomes more relevant after she is already gone. That makes the tragedy feel backward. Instead of developing Emma first and then making her death hurt, the game kills her and then tries to explain why she mattered. The second problem is gameplay consequence. In a game where combat is so heavily built around squad structure, roles, and strategy, losing Emma should have changed something. Her death should have forced the player to adapt. Maybe you lose a combat role. Maybe your unions become weaker. Maybe you need to rebuild your strategy. Maybe you feel her absence not only in the story, but on the battlefield. But that does not really happen. The game introduces Emmy, Emma's daughter, almost immediately after. She inherits the same general space in the party, a fast, dual-wielding physical fighter with support and healing potential. In practical terms, she keeps the structure intact. So the game asks you to feel loss, but mechanically protects you from feeling it. Almost like the game is saying, do not worry, your warranty replacement unit has arrived. That is a huge issue. Emma dies, Emmy arrives, the Honeywell family succession becomes relevant, and the story continues. There is grief, yes, but not enough emptiness, not enough silence, not enough sense that the party has lost someone irreplaceable. What actually changed from the game mechanics perspective? Nothing. Same general role, same battlefield function, similar abilities, and almost the same name. Players barely even need to remember a new character. So why do similar twists work in other games? Let's start with the obvious, timeless classic, Final Fantasy VII. Aerith's death works because it hurts on every level, emotional, mechanical, and structural. By the time Aerith dies, the player has spent a long time with her. She is not just another party member. She is playful, strange, kind, mysterious, and deeply connected to the larger story. The game builds intimacy through dialogue, travel, optional choices, and character moments. Aerith is the party's strongest dedicated healer, with unique limit breaks no one else can copy. If you invested time into her, that investment is gone. If you relied on her healing, you now have to rethink your strategy. Aerith is not just a party member. She is the foundational, cosmic pillar of the entire universe. She is the last living ancient, the key to the planet's survival. She leaves behind an unfixable, echoing void. Her absence becomes the psychological engine for the entire rest of the narrative, driving Cloud's trauma and directly shaping the ultimate salvation of the planet from within the lifestream. The game does not give you Aerith's daughter 5 minutes later with the same staff, the same role, and better stats. She is gone. That is why the loss becomes permanent. In contrast, Emma is a stoic, older mentor figure. In RPG design, the veteran general is highly disposable. They often exist to give younger characters a reason to grow. Her death fits a predictable trope, meaning the audience is subconsciously prepared for it. Moreover, Emma is treated by her own game as fundamentally replaceable. Her death does not alter the cosmic balance of the world, nor does it change how the war against the Conqueror is fought. The game's structural design immediately exposes her as a disposable asset. The moment she dies, the game hands you her daughter. Mechanically, Emmy is an upgraded Emma clone. Another example is Fable II. I cried when the dog was killed. I am not even ashamed of it. Even now, I feel sad remembering this moment. That dog was our buddy, our companion. our little treasure detector with legs and tail. This is a completely different kind of story, but it understands something very important. Absence must be felt after the loss. The dog in Fable II is not just decoration. It follows you, helps you, reacts to you, finds treasure, assists in combat, and makes the world feel less lonely. Over time, the dog becomes part of how you experience the game. So when the dog dies, the loss is not only emotional, it is physical. And if you choose wealth or the salvation of strangers, the dog stays dead. It's not replaced with another dog. The world becomes quieter. Nobody barks when treasure is nearby. Nobody runs beside you in the same way. Nobody celebrates with you. The player feels the absence through normal gameplay. The game does not need to constantly explain that the dog mattered. You already know, because you feel what is missing. This is exactly what the Last Remnant does not do with Emma. Because Emmy fills the gap so quickly, the player does not have to live in the empty space. The game avoids the discomfort that would have made the death stronger. One more interesting comparison is Final Fantasy XIV and Moenbryda. Her time in the story is also quite short. Players can fairly say they did not spend a huge amount of time with her. But Moenbryda's death works better because the game gives her long-term impact. First, there is the Urianger factor. Moenbryda's death changes Urianger. Before that, he is often treated as a cryptic lore character, someone who speaks in riddles and keeps emotional distance from everyone. But after Moenbryda dies, that distance starts to look different. Her death reveals grief, guilt, and emotional damage inside him. And this does not disappear after one quest. Her loss follows him for expansions. It returns much later in Endwalker, when Urianger meets her parents. That scene works because the game remembers Moenbryda. It allows her death to echo hundreds of hours later. The story does not just use her death as a plot device and move on. It lets the wound remain. Second, Moenbryda's sacrifice matters to the world building. She does not just die because the villain needs to look dangerous. Her death proves something crucial about the rules of the universe. Through her knowledge of ether and white auracite, she helps establish how the Scions can permanently defeat Ascians, enemies who previously seemed impossible to truly kill. So her sacrifice changes the story's logic. After her death, the world is different. The heroes know something they did not know before. Future victories become possible because of what she did. That gives her death purpose beyond sadness. Emma's death does not have that same weight. It shows that the Conqueror is dangerous, yes, but it does not transform our understanding of the world. It does not change the rules of Remnants. It does not reshape the party in a lasting way. It mostly transfers legacy from mother to daughter. And third, Moenbryda is not replaced. There is no Moenbryda 2.0 arriving with the same personality, the same function, and better stats. The Scions simply have to continue without her. Her absence remains part of the group's emotional history. That is what Emma needed. Not necessarily the same amount of screen time, not necessarily the same style of writing, but she needed consequence.
Had I been quicker or wiser, but I was not, and you paid the price.
What other games would you include in this comparison? Where did the death of a main character become a real driver of the story? Did that twist feel natural and painful to you, or did it feel forced? Tell me in the comments. And this is where the tragedy starts to feel less meaningful. The problem is not only character substitution. The real issue is that the game wants Emma's death to feel tragic, but it does not fully commit to that tragedy, because there is no real contrast between before and after. Emmy is not visually different enough to make the player feel that a completely new personality has entered the party. She is not a different combat type that forces you to rethink your squad. And without contrast, the tragedy loses power. It devalues Emma's death and makes Emmy feel like she does not have her own personality, because she inherits almost everything from her mother. A strong character death needs change. Something must shift after it happens. The party changes, the world changes, the gameplay changes, the emotional tone changes. Or at least, the story carries the wound forward. Aerith changes the rest of Final Fantasy VII and leaves an emotional wound on an entire generation of players. The dog changes the way you experience Fable II. Moenbryda changes Urianger, the Scions, and even the rules of fighting Ascians. But Emma's death does not change anything. That is why the moment failed for me. Not because Emma was a bad character. Actually, it is the opposite. Emma had potential. Her design, her presence, her role, and her connection to legacy could have made her death powerful. But instead of creating contrast, the game creates continuity. And that is what makes The Last Remnant so frustrating. Because this is not a bad game. The combat is ambitious, the union system is unusual, and the world has that heavy Square Enix fantasy atmosphere, where every city feels built on top of forgotten history. The game has identity, but its story does not always know what to do with it. And this problem goes beyond Emma. David's other three generals, Torgal, Pegas, and Blocter, start as important, memorable figures, but slowly fade into the background. Emma at least remains tied to the main story, because Rush mistakes her for his sister early on, and her death becomes part of the Honeywell succession plot. But the other generals mostly survive as combat assets. Their personal quests become a way to unlock ultimate abilities, not to deepen their role in the story. That is the strange contrast of The Last Remnant. Great mechanics, interesting world, memorable characters, but story twists that often feel unfinished. I respect this game. I admire its combat. I understand why people still defend it. But for me, the emotional side never reached the desired level of attachment. And Emma's death was the pivotal point that damaged the game and ruined the entire experience. Did Emma's death work for you? Tell me in the comments. What do you think about The Last Remnant? Did you feel attached enough to Emma? Or did the replacement happen so quickly that you barely noticed it? Like and subscribe. See you next time.